welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to unpack how to absolutely bulletproof your next big project. Okay, picture this. Your massive software update just went live, and boom, immediately the servers crash. Total disaster, right? And then in the fallout, you hear someone quietly mumble, "Yeah, I kind of saw that coming." Ugh, it's incredibly frustrating. Well, today we're going to fix that using a highly effective technique called the Pre-Mortem protocol. We're going to look at the exact mechanics of identifying launch risks through what's known as prospective hindsight. So let's dive right into our playbook for today. We're going to cover the optimism trap, the pre-mortem protocol itself, a really tactical 45-minute execution strategy, maintaining a living risk radar, and finally, the post-mortem reality check. We're taking this straight from the psychological pitfalls of traditional planning right into a technique you can literally use today. All right, starting off with Section 1, the optimism trap and the hidden flaw in standard launch reviews. To really understand this trap, I want you to engage in a little bit of mental time travel with me right now. Ask yourself this exact, pretty jarring question. It's 6 months from now. The launch was an absolute disaster. What went wrong? Now, in most normal launch reviews, the room is just asked if a plan looks good, which inadvertently creates this giant optimism trap. People naturally hide their doubts because nobody wants to ruin the positive vibes, right? But by forcing this stark, worst-case scenario question, you completely bypass all that toxic optimism. And there's a really stark psychological contrast at play here. Think about your normal review meeting. Raising a risk makes you feel like, well, you're not being a team player. You're the wet blanket. But in a pre-mortem, the entire stated goal of the exercise is to find what kills the launch. So suddenly, servicing a risk goes from being this disloyal act to the ultimate cooperative, heroic move. That single psychological reframe changes the entire dynamic of the room. Which brings us to Section 2, the pre-mortem protocol, and how shifting your mindset catches the risks those confident planning meetings always seem to miss. So this really illustrates the core psychology at play here, prospective hindsight. Basically, this means imagining a future event as if it has already occurred, which dramatically improves our ability to spot failure points. Think about it. We aren't asking what could go wrong, we are stating it did go wrong. Our brains are actually wired to solve mysteries that have already happened way more efficiently than trying to predict abstract probabilities about the future. So why does this protocol actually work so incredibly well? First off, because it assumes failure is a stone-cold fact. And by doing that, you finally give your team the explicit permission to voice those lingering doubts. You know the ones, the doubts that usually just stay quiet and turn into those tragic post-mortem findings when nobody flags them in time. This protocol literally pulls those post-mortem findings into the present, way before the launch even happens. It's a real game changer. Okay, theory is great, but theory doesn't ship products. Let's get tactical with Section 3, the 45-minute execution, your step-by-step survival guide. Here's your rapid-fire playbook to run this meeting in under an hour. Step 1, set the scene by stating plainly that the launch failed badly. Step 2, have everyone write down their reasons silently for exactly 5 minutes. Step 3, collect those reasons, cluster the similar failure modes together, and rate each one based on its likelihood and its impact. And finally, Step 4, assign specific owners to the biggest risks. Actually, let's pause on Step 2 for a second, because the methodology here is incredibly precise. Silence and independent writing first prevents the loudest voice from anchoring the room. If you just open the floor to brainstorming right away, the most dominant personality, or maybe the most senior person, is going to dictate the entire room's thought process. By forcing 5 minutes of silent writing, you're collecting every single unvarnished reason without any debate. And then we arrive at Step 4, which honestly might be the most critical part of this whole explainer. I want you to burn this powerful maxim into your memory right now. A risk without an owner is just a worry. I mean, if your team brilliantly identifies a catastrophic failure mode, but you walk out of that room without explicitly assigning a person to own and mitigate that risk, you haven't actually solved anything. You've just created a really well-documented list of anxieties. This brings us perfectly to Section 4, the living risk radar, where we look at moving beyond just having a cathartic brainstorming session. You see, here's where most teams stumble. The fatal mistake is treating this pre-mortem as a one-off meeting. You get together, you vent, you imagine disaster, it feels super cathartic. And then you put it all in a document that gets closed the second the meeting ends. No way. The real value comes from transforming that output into a living list of ranked, owned risks. This radar has to live somewhere visible, and the team needs to check it constantly as the launch date approaches. Finally, let's transition to Section 5, the post-mortem reality check, where we actually close the loop after the launch is over. So here is how you validate the entire process. After the launch, you've got to compare reality to what your pre-mortem predicted. The risks you foresaw and mitigated, those are your team's massive wins. You saw the bullet coming and you completely dodged it. But the unexpected surprises, the things that went wrong that you didn't predict, well, those expose the blind spots in how your team imagines failure. And that teaches you how to run an even sharper pre-mortem the next time around. When we summarize everything we've covered today, the math is just incredibly compelling. Consider the cost. Spending a mere 45 minutes of your time, plus maybe the mild discomfort of actively imagining your own failure. Now consider the return. Surfacing the exact single risk that could have completely derailed your launch, and surfacing it while there's still time to act. When you weigh it out like that, the trade-off isn't just favorable, it's an absolute no-brainer. As we wrap up this explainer, you now have the mindset, the 45-minute tactical execution plan, and a living risk radar. So I want to leave you with this. Before your next big release goes live, I challenge you to look at your team and ask the absolute only question that matters. It failed. Why? Try putting this protocol to work, and I guarantee your launches will never be the same. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.